Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, Matt, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guest Heidi. Welcome. I love your hair, by the way. That's work. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Toastmaster has said, this evening I will be dealing with interpretive reading. It's an opportunity for me to interpret a book that I've read, a very good book, by the way. Some of you may be familiar with Mr. John Grisham. He's written quite a number of books, some that have even been made into movies. Here are a few. A Time to Kill, The Firm, The Pelican Brief, The Client, The Chamber, The Rainmaker, The Runaway Jury, The Partner, The Street Lawyer, The Testament, The Brethren, The Painted House, Skipping Christmas, The Summons, The King of Torts, and Bleachers. As Ralph noted, this is usually supposed to be a 12 to 15 minute speech, but because that is such a long time, I decided that I will do it more so in increments. So I will come back another time, do another 5 to 7 minute interpretive reading, if that works for you, of course. I hope that doesn't cause any problems, Ralph.
No problem.
Thank you very much. Let me please give you a little background on this book. And of course I will read it. In 1970, one of Mississippi's more colorful weekly newspapers, the Ford County Times, went bankrupt. To the surprise and dismay of many, ownership was assumed by a 23-year-old college dropout named Willie Traynor. The future of the paper looked grim until a young mother was brutally raped and murdered by a member of the notorious Paget family. Willie Traynor reported all the gruesome details, and his newspaper began to prosper. The murderer, Danny Paget, was tried before a packed courthouse in Clanton, Mississippi. The trial came to a startling and dramatic end when the defendant threatened revenge against the jurors if they convicted him. Nevertheless, they found him guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison. But in Mississippi, in 1970, life didn't necessarily mean life. And 9 years later, Danny Paget managed to get himself paroled. He returned to Ford County, and retribution began. This book has a lot of different twists, and it deals directly with racism. I enjoyed reading it, and I just want to share the first chapter with you, because I think the first chapter really gives you a good outlook of what you're in store for. Chapter 1. After decades of patient mismanagement and loving neglect, the Ford County Times went bankrupt in 1970. The owner and publisher, Miss Emma Cotto, was 93 years old and strapped to a bed in a nursing home in Tupelo. The editor, her son, Wilson Cotto, was in his 70s and had a plate in his head from the First War. A perfect circle, of dark grafted skin covered the plate at the top of his long, sloping forehead, and throughout his adult life, he had endured the nickname of Spot. Spot, do this. Spot, do that. Here, Spot, there, Spot. Come here, Spot. In his younger years, he covered town meetings, football games, elections, trials, church socials, all sorts of activities in Ford County. He was a good reporter. Thorough and extremely thorough. Evidently, the head wound did not affect his ability to write. But sometime after the Second War, the plate apparently shifted. And Mr. Cotto stopped writing everything but the obituaries. He loved obituaries. Spent hours on them. He filled paragraphs of eloquent prose detailing the lives of even the humblest of the Ford Countyans. And the death of a wealthy or prominent citizen was front page news, with Mr. Cotto seizing the moment. He never missed a wake or a funeral. Never wrote anything bad about anyone. All received glory in the end. Ford County, it was a wonderful place to die. And Spot was a very, very popular man. Even though he was crazy. The only real crisis of his journalist career happened in 1967. About the time the civil rights movement finally made it to Ford County. The paper had never shown the slightest hint of racial tolerance. No black faces appeared in its pages except those belonging to known or suspected criminals. No black wedding announcement, no black honor students, or baseball teams. But in 1967, Mr. Cotto made a startling discovery. Am I all right?
You're over.
Oh. He awoke one morning to the realization that black people were dying in Ford County and their deaths were not being properly reported. There was a whole new fertile world of obituaries waiting out there, and Mr. Cotto set sail in dangerous and uncharted waters. On Wednesday, March 8th, 1967, the Times became the first white-owned weekly in Mississippi to run the obituary of a Negro. For the most part, they went unnoticed. To be continued, but just to kind of tickle your ear and give you a slight outlook. Mr. Toastmaster, thank you. Thank you, Toastmaster. Big hand for Reggie.